security peeps. We are live with another edition of Breaking Into Cybersecurity. I am Renee Small, cybersecurity super recruiter, helping awesome leaders hire great talent. And I'm here with a fabulous person today, Murtaza Nisar. Hi, Murtaza. Welcome to the show.
Hey Renee, I would say you're also a fabulous person. I've been loving what you've been doing for our community, making it more approachable. So I'm very happy to be here with you.
That's so exciting. I'm so happy to have you on. I know it is going to be a very engaging show only because we've already chatted a little bit about what we are going to be talking about today and everything. I mean, when I created the thumbnail for the show and it had the person transitioning from a prior career to a new career in cyber, I got
hmm
really excited because I know that's some of the things that we're going to be talking about. But before we do that, Murtaza, please tell us about yourself. We usually start off the show by going through the person's background, how you got into this leadership role that you're in today. So if you could, and before we even start that, happy Ramadan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you
Happy
so
Ramadan,
much.
everybody.
Really appreciate that. Yeah,
Yes.
Ramadan Mubarak to all who are participating.
Yes. And for those who are here, please chime in and let us know
Mhm.
where you are viewing from, where you're listening from, all over the world, all over the country. We tend to have a really great following of people across the country and across the world, which is cool too. So, Murtaza, I am going to kick it over to you.
Thanks, Renee. And just a quick note, all the views I'm sharing today are mine, not my company's. Yeah, I'm the CISO for a global health tech company. And previously, I was the CISO for a global pharmaceutical company. And then prior to that, I spent most of my career working for PwC, so more on the consulting side in the Silicon Valley practice. Um, the other thing I kind of, outside of like my day job, I really love doing is just some of the sort of community engagement work. So I'm an advisor and investor in a few startups, as well as an advisor to Kennesaw State University's Cyber Advisory Board, and that's something I started end of last year. I'm very happy about. It's actually the second oldest cyber program in the country,
I
KSU.
didn't even know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either actually until I got introduced to them, and just kind of working with them to not only help them shape the curriculum, but also obviously the future leaders in this industry.
Absolutely. I'm curious about so many different things. Kennesaw State, in particular, being the second oldest cyber program in the country. Do you know? Do you happen to know like what year they started? Do you
I
know?
should know that. I'll look that up. I don't
God,
know
it's
that off the top of
okay.
my head.
I'm just so curious since it's the
hmm
second oldest. It's so good to hear.
hmm
Go. I mean, just that knowledge.
Right.
Very interesting. So
It's a
before we
great
jump in,
program. Yep.
yeah, before we jump in, so many people are here. First, my co-host is on the other side. Howdy, partner from her partner in cyber. So Chris Bolon, thank you for being here. Good afternoon. Courtney Reynolds is happy to join. Thank
Hey,
you
Chris. Hey,
again,
Courtney.
Courtney. Let's see. I know Paul Cummings is in the building. Bianca, I know she's here from the UK. Hari is back. Hey everyone, glad to connect. So we have a good couple folks already in here. David Curtis, happy to be here. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you too. So getting
Hey, everyone.
started. Yes. So Murtaza, I know that one of the things that we were chatting about initially was you transitioning. One of the things that I thought was really interesting is how some folks how you as a leader have taken people who have had different backgrounds that were not in security, completely changed, career changers, and these were
hmm
seasoned people. So they were in their careers for years. They weren't like, college students or
Right.
brand new. They had years of experience in one career, and then they transitioned, and you helped them transition into cybersecurity in a whole different career.
hmm
And I know those are some questions that we would get very
hmm
often. how to do it. How do you, I'm a nurse. I want to move into cyber. I'm whatever role I'm in and I want to move into cyber. How do I do that? And you've done that successfully. You've helped people do that successfully. So I'm really, really interested to hear about how that was done.
Well, I mean, uh, it's all the credit goes to them. Let me actually, and I actually checked with them to make sure it's okay if I share their story, and they were more than happy because they also want to share this story so that others can be inspired, right, and learn.
I would love for them to
Uh,
come on,
yeah,
actually.
yeah,
have, have
let's
them
phone
come
a
on the
friend.
show.
Um,
Put in a plug.
that would be a pretty good panel for sure.
Yeah.
So one of them, for example, was uh, a teacher, and for this person had been a teacher. Forgot what grade level, but maybe elementary, middle school, but for quite a long time, right? And she uh, also, just because of that teacher bug and just working with individuals from various backgrounds and getting that sort of sense of excitement when someone gets that moment of learning that this person got that point. She got she just got the cyber bug. She met someone from my team, reached out to them on LinkedIn, hey, I want to learn more about this industry, and basically went through this mentorship journey with the culmination of when we were hiring for someone in our GRC team with a specific focus on cyber awareness. We're like, hey, are you interested? And this person ended up interviewing, getting the job, because why not, right? Who better qualified to kind of teach people about cybersecurity, train people, create that culture of awareness than an ex-teacher? Another example is, and I also confirmed with this person, shared the story, but this individual, she was a sergeant detective in Indiana in their narcotics division. This person, talk about
Wow.
stress, right? This person has gone undercover and worked on narcotics things. I don't even know. I love hearing stories from her. Um, but life happens. She got into a situation where she found herself being a single mom. That lifestyle she was going through was not. She realized that she couldn't keep that going, right, with her new situation. And again, she was networking. She reached out to people, including someone from my team, which I'll talk about, having that culture in a team that kind of embraces new talent. But reach out to this individual and just start being curious, right, about cybersecurity and what does it do. uh, she ended up going to law school and started getting a law degree on the side. And as she was communicating, talking to one of my senior directors about our industry, she started to realize that, hey, there's a lot of similarities between what she's done in the past and what this sort of role would do, right? And eventually, when we had a role open in our governance, risk, and compliance team, we asked if she's interested, and she applied, and she got the job. And as a matter of fact, she's been one of the top performers in our team. Um, I guess what I would say, and maybe I should have kind of set the stage with this: the security department of today is very much different from what it was in the past and what will be in the future, right? Few years ago, yeah, this was one of those departments that maybe was considered a back office department, but that's not the case right now, right? A cybersecurity department these days, we're working with IT, of course, but not. We also work with product. We work with legal. We work with marketing. We work with HR, communications, right? And all those sort of interactions and relationships we have may need different skill sets. Yes, there are jobs and needs that require a very sort of technical background, absolutely, but those are not the only sort of needs that a security department may have. So so that's, and in our case we had that, right? We wanted to build our awareness program. We wanted to build GRC, mature our GRC program and work with legal on contracts and other things, right? Well, we found two individuals who had the passion, had done some research, had did their own research and learning, and they were a good fit.
Those are two fascinating stories. I have heard over time people, one of the biggest questions we get is how to transition and how not to go completely backwards. So taking, not as I as you know, the saying goes, throwing the baby out with the bathwater. So you have this person who's a detective, and she was when I was creating my thumbnail. I said, go from a detective to to a cyber person, and they gave me that awesome. I was like, this is perfect. Um, and so her getting having those detective skills, and Chris says it down here, investigators are amazing cyber sleuths.
Mm-hmm.
Having that, having those experiences, and then understanding, seeing, hey, this can transition over. Like, I don't have to throw everything out that that I've
Mm-hmm.
learned, and transition it at a level where, you know, you don't feel like I used to talk to people all the time, and they would say, you know, I in their minds, they had to go all the way back and kind of throw away all the knowledge and experiences that they already had. And this goes to show that you do not have to do that. You don't need to do
Absolutely.
it. Chris, again, teachers do amazing in cyber. We know this.
I mean, every experience that a person has had, right? Every experience teaches you something, growth,
Right,
right? As a job seeker, you need to kind of be able to identify, hey, what are the things I learned from the experiences I've had that can, that align with this role, right?
right, right,
Um, we talk about being calm under pressure all the time in cyber, right? Well, that like you said, right? Being a
detective,
sergeant detective in a narcotics department, right? You don't get more stressful situations than that.
right, undercover, out
Hmm.
there in the
Hmm.
street. Um, Amazing. Luce says, good afternoon. Excited to hear about transitioning to this field, because I know Luce is a person who is on her way doing that same exact thing. So, Murtaza, you said that there were, they did research, they did some of the things that they did. Can you go into a little bit more detail around
Hmm.
what, if you remember, what specifically? Well, first, you said they had mentors.
Hmm.
So I'm curious how, if you know
Right.
how they got the mentors. That's another question we get often.
Right.
How did you find a mentor? How did this person know? You know, were they just friends and they happen to say, oh, I know someone who's in security? Like, do you know how that came
Sure.
about? That's question number one. And then secondly, it's around, I guess after getting the mentor can then tell you kind of like what to do in
Yeah.
terms of
Yeah.
skill sets.
Um, I'll actually, if you may, and I could have mentioned this in my intro, but since you brought this topic about mentorship up now, I'll bring this up, something about my background, which was
Okay.
not necessarily transitioning to cyber, but how do I transition into a CISO role? So
Yes.
back in college, right, I was doing a co-op, which for those who don't know is basically, think of it as your student, but you're working at a company as a full-time employee for a number of months or a year. Um,
It's
and
kind of similar to an internship,
yeah, yeah,
but
but
it's
a
across
much longer
longer.
internship,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Uh, and just like most interns and co-ops programs do, there was a sort of final presentation, right, where all the co-ops kind of did their final presentation and there were guests, right, executive guests in the audience. And so it turned out the guest in the audience happened to be for the head of global infrastructure, and he really liked my presentation. Okay, something caught his eye. So and he told me that. So I used that as a, hey, oh, that's great. Would you mind being a mentor for me, right? uh, while I was there, as well as after I finished the co-op. So when went back to school, I still connected with him, stayed in touch, right? Even after I graduated and started working, I stayed in touch with him. Why am I telling you this? Well, turns out, I ended up moving states and cities. I ended up, finding myself in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and I kind of lost in touch for a couple of years with him. But 12 years, 13 years after that, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I've been following your career." And he had just gotten this CIA job for a major global company, right? And he was building the program. He needed a person to lead the security program, right? He needed a CISO, and he said, "Would I be interested?" And so, of course, I mean, I didn't get just didn't get the job handed to me, but it gave me a way in, right? I had an interview, and I showed that I was, I belonged. But that just shows the powerful mentorship and networking, right? Someone you met 12, don't think of mentorship or networking as something, you may get the benefit immediately, or in a few months, right? Sometimes long term. And a mentor doesn't have to be like an executive or someone way further, way up in the corporate chain, right? It could be a peer, because the same people hopefully will be growing their own careers, right, as time passes. So I wanted to share some personal experience on mentorship from my end too, and because I have firsthand, I've benefited from it firsthand. Now, going back to your question about the transitioning piece, um, I think I kind of look at it from two angles. One is the the cyber leaders themselves, okay, and I don't, if there are any cyber leaders listening in, or future leaders, right? I think it's very important for you all to create that culture of inclusivity. Um, my senior director on the team, they're very passionate about this topic as much as I am, or maybe even more so, right? Uh, and that doesn't happen, right? Like there's conscious decision behind that. When I'm recruiting for my leaders, and when we're talking as a team, we talk about this stuff. Um, us leaders, we need to be open to change. For example, do we need to look at our minimum job requirements? Do you really need to force people, a college degree? Is that a must have at this point? uh Heck, some folks are even looking at background checks, right? Are there things that are, as soon as you fail, you're out, or it's a conversation to have, right? We gotta adopt to the new world. um we also have to be a bit more approachable, and vulnerable, right? I think a lot of times security leaders, especially on social media, come across, I think the term is like celebrity CISOs, or whatever you want to call it,
Celebrity.
but right, but like social media is basically, usually you're showcasing the best of you, right, in your program, right? But realize that the person who's receiving that message may feel a bit overwhelmed, right? Intimidated. So make yourself more approachable. Now, on the seeker side, like I said, network. Uh, and in this example, both of these individuals reached out to one of my senior directors on LinkedIn, who had made herself approachable, right? She had talked about her journey as well, and it started off at, hey, I just want to learn about this area, about the space, right? And I think one thing to do is, when you're approaching someone for a mentorship, well, first of all, realize, don't be afraid to ask, right? What's the worst that can happen? They may say no, right? Right? And that may not be because they don't want to, maybe they're just busy, right? But the worst they can say is, no, I don't have the time, right? But don't be afraid to ask. Again, realize that what you're seeing on social media, those people are actually approachable. But perhaps also have some sort of agenda. Hey, this is why I want you to be my mentor. This is what I'm trying to gain from this, right? This is what I trying to, like, you create an agenda, because you're only going to get out of it what you're going to put in. um so those are, I know, from, you asked about them, how did
Yep.
they approach, that's how they came about the mentorship. You also asked about the research. From there, from those conversations, the person from my team, my senior director, she ended up basically guiding these individuals around, hey, read this book, right? Or to understand, like, hey, this is what our industry gives you, a summary view of our industry, what it is, to really see, hey, is this what you want to proceed, right? Is this what you want to pursue? Once that happened, then the conversation kept on going. Let me pause there. I'm sure that there was a lot to
No,
unpack.
this no. That's fantastic. Just understanding how a person goes about that, because I think sometimes, I know we do it because we've been there, but really breaking down like the step by step how they found these mentors. I think yesterday we were on a live stream and someone said, well, how do you find these people? Like, how do you excuse me, how do you approach it? So by you sharing that, they may look like celebrities and they may look like these big, intimidating folks online, I can say that in cyber, and I know one of our earlier guests said this, it's one of the only places where you can actually approach the C suite folks and they will reach back out. Like I remember us
Mhm.
having someone on, Chris, if you're, I know you're listening, so maybe you remember his name. He was saying that he used to be in finance, right? So he's at like a JP Morgan Chase or whatever when Jamie Dimon was the CEO or whoever, I can't remember, CFO, whoever was, may have been the CFO. And he was like, there's no way, like, I can't imagine reaching out to this person and the person reaching back out to me saying, yes, I want to help. But in security, he was transitioning. He was going from a finance career, I believe, into security. And
Mhm.
he was talking about how approachable so many of the leaders are. And I think that's it's so true that there's such a community of we want to help and we're excited that somebody else wants to jump in too, that we get a lot of leaders who, if you do approach them on LinkedIn, that they will respond. So
Well,
it's
you're
it's
absolutely right. I mean, it's very approachable, but it also I would say, um, what do you have to lose, right? The worst is like they'll say no, right?
yeah.
And I wouldn't count them against them, right? I wouldn't hold it like, oh, hey, this person's not, being supportive. I can tell you, like, I get so many messages on LinkedIn, and so many of them from vendors that I, lose track, right? But the other thing is, that I was trying to say in the other earlier on, is it doesn't also, your mentor doesn't have to be a CISO, right? Even it even a a first year or second year or third year person in cyber could be someone you can reach out to, right?
They're the
they
yeah.
they can teach you actually maybe even more sort of practical sort of knowledge, like, hey, this is how I transitioned, and this is how my first year went, right?
Yes.
And help you even more. So, don't just focus on leaders, right? Like, kind of cast your sort of net broader.
That's such a good point. How we ended up, and I share with you how we started this podcast 5 years ago was that we wanted the person that had been in 1 year, 6 months, 9 months. We wanted folks who had just transitioned to be able to share their stories because you're right. What you did 10 years ago, what people had been, the feedback or the advice that some people had been getting then from leaders who at that time had gone through, oh, I was a sysadmin for 5 years and then I did this and this and this and this, and that's how you get into security, so go be
Hmm.
a sysadmin, right? And this poor person is like, I just paid this money and got this security degree. What are you talking about? I didn't go to school and be a sysadmin. So it's so true, because I don't think that they were causing any harm per se. They were just telling their story, and they think everyone's path was their path, that same path. And so we learned, and Chris and I were on this, learning every day about different ways people transitioned in. And we would have only learned that from having peers. So when you say that, you're absolutely, I mean, we see it happening
Hmm.
every day. And Paul Cummings says, love it. Mentorship is both up and down. It's true.
Right.
Your peers, your, folks that are a year after you, I love talking to newer people because I want to know, what are you doing? Like, what's happening right now?
Right.
So it's great. There's so many comments in here. Let's see. Chris says, you are a shining example of a servant leader. Let him know if you need a deputy. Chris is looking. So you may have a hire right there. Paul says, this is the only field where you can ask a C-suite person, what are they hiring for? What are their people needs or forecasting needs, and actually get answers. It really is. It's true. They're a step ahead of you and can give you more relevant knowledge. And this is what we're talking about with the mentorship. Um, and don't limit yourself to one
Hmm.
mentor. And if your mentor isn't learning from you, also, is it a coach or a mentor?
Oh, actually, I love that comment because another
Mm-hmm.
thing is I was mentioning before, right? How cyber programs now of today and the future are not just in the back office IT function, right?
Yep.
Again, going back to the wider net, the wider net could be up, down. It could also be, hey, not
Left, right.
necessarily cyber, but also left, right,
Mm-hmm.
right? Legal and private. I have such a good partnership with my general counsel. We work with them all the time, right? They
Mm-hmm.
know a lot about cyber these days as well, right? um IT themselves, right? Infrastructure, right? Product management. There's You're trying to, again, uh, when you're looking for a mentor, you need to know why this individual and how this individual can help, and the why and the how doesn't necessarily be the same for every individual. It should be different, right? Based on their background, what you're looking for. So I love that comment, Paul.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that when you have multiple mentors, you get so many different experiences. And it's kind of
Hmm.
cool because you can have a person, like I was chatting with someone around me being in the recruiting space and the different types of recruiting. So I was having a conversation. I was like, oh, this person could be my hiring manager mentor. Like the type of role, like
Yeah,
how does it work now? Or for this particular skill set that's
yeah.
budding, that's growing, like what does this mean? All of these different things,
Well,
because as someone doing recruit, like I need to keep up with what is happening in the industry as well. So there's different ones,
exactly.
there's different people that bring different skill sets to the table. And I love that. I love Paul's comment about
Yes.
also they should be learning from you too. So
Yes.
it has to be a
Yes.
two-way street. You want to be
Yes.
bringing things to the table as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And,
go
and and
ahead.
if I may piggyback on the other
Yeah.
comment that you made, um, it's so you're casting a wider net, and they should be learning from you as well. Uh, and like I said, like even if the person's a peer, right? Who knows where they're going to be in the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is, I think you said it yourself, Renee. You're trying to learn experiences. So the examples I gave, this person was a teacher, this person was a sergeant in the police department, right?
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them had worked for a corporate America. So they might have also reached out to individuals, maybe not in the cyber department, but in some other department, just to learn, hey, how does corporate America look like, right? Learning things like, how do I communicate? What's the best way to do email, right? Like we know there's a lot of different ways you can communicate, even though you're using email, right? It could be an essay or it could be a 3 bullet list, right? How do I communicate upwards? How can I make downwards? Say, how does it feel to work in a team that's remote, right? Things like
Right.
that. So there's you're trying to understand experiences, right? Not just necessarily like give me very specific cyber technical details.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris says he loves learning from Paul. Chris said coaching is such a relevant learning approach,
Hmm.
learning the soft skills from others.
Hmm.
That's true. Courtney Reynolds says, I'm also open to working for entry level positions full time. She has a few Microsoft certs, working on BS in security technology online. So Courtney is also doing some. Okay, so here's a question. What are the top three most exciting and up and coming subfields of cybersecurity? I want to know that too.
Um, well, these days I think you'll hear about AI everywhere, regardless of cyber, just in technology in in general. Like AI is on top of mind. That's also true for cyber. There's a couple angles when it comes to AI and cyber. One is, hey, what does it mean? One is actually just like if you're a cybersecurity vendor developing cybersecurity products, right, tools, you're actively trying to see how can you leverage AI to make your tool better, right? So there's that angle. And then from sort of the practitioner angle, you're looking at, hey, there's this AI is now much more accessible. How can I kind of how can I reduce the threat vector there, right? Whether it be through social AI being used for social engineering attacks, or AI, you know, attackers trying to kind of manipulate AI data to make AI models inaccurate, right? So there's that angle too. So AI in cyber is kind of one of them. There's a Especially with some recent regulatory regulations, there's a lot of push from my perspective on risk. How do you kind of do better risk management, risk communication, risk quantification? There's a lot of that. And then another one, not necessarily hot, but it's just a continuation, is zero trust. And I don't think there's zero trust as a tool. It's a mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
That encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses cloud, it encompasses identity for sure, right, and other items.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would say though, if the person who asks is a like first time person who wants to transition cyber, don't just
Mm-hmm.
look at the hot stuff, right? The basic stuff is still there, right? Or the fundamental stuff is there. We still have to make sure systems are up to date, right? And that also can be, you know, that may sound boring, but there's a lot of innovation happening in those areas too, right? How do we keep systems up to date? How do we do vulnerability management? And there's like risk-based vulnerability management there. So don't just aim or shoot for the shiny stuff, right? Because it's the fundamentals that honestly a lot of times make or break the program.
Right. Yep. Um, Harry says a lot of entry level cybersecurity jobs require 4 to 5 years of experience. I'm trying to develop my skills by doing projects in these domains. Appreciate your advice on tips to bridge this gap.
Um, so first of all, I need to empathize here with Harry, right? From my perspective, an entry level job shouldn't say 45 years experience because I don't think then it's an entry level job, right? Um, Worst case, I mean, at least make him 0 to 3 if you're really wanting in a bind and you want to have a
I
broader
agree.
range, right? 4 to 5, I don't think it was an entry level job. Uh, Now, so in that case, Harry the the where we need to fix is more on the leader side. We as leaders need to be better at identifying entry level job, and as I mentioned, making the jobs be more approachable. From a seeker side, um, this is where you need to, yes, certifications obviously are an easy way to show that, hey, I may not have the work experience, but I have the knowledge, right? See whether you can do, um, you know uh, depends on the CISO, but a lot of CISOs appreciate people trying to learn and do practical work on the side. So for example, if you want to get into pen testing, right? I think I forgot the comment there. I think one of the certifications getting was for pen testing. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
you can put on your resume, maybe it's not work related, but hey, uh I worked on this project on the side where I built an app or tried to, you know, break an app and see what the vulnerabilities are, right? Well, that shows me experience, right? It may not be direct work experience, but it's experience related to the job. Um, there's also, depending on the area you're interested in, there's actually also um, companies and programs out there that allow people to show experience without working full time. So, for example, the program that comes to my mind is like bug bounty programs. There's, if you've heard of like Bug Crowd, Hacker One, right? Those are programs where, anyone can, well, based on certain sort of credentials, you can sign up and see, hey, I'm trying to find vulnerabilities in companies or products, right, in an ethical manner, and that also can showcase experience. So to answer your question, yeah, it's obviously, like I said, I don't think an entry level job should have minimum 45, right? um, and then outside of actually showing work experience, right, you can show experience, and hopefully that can help you out.
Excellent points. Excellent points here. Denzel Kelly says, what is the likelihood of AI supplanting cybersecurity professionals?
um so this question comes a decent amount now, and not just for cyber. Again, AI is impacting all industries, right? So I'm sure this sort of question, if your guest was a CIO or chief, HR officer, they may be getting this question too.
Mm-hmm.
uh, I like to think that I don't think AI is kind of replacing professionals. I think it is allowing the cyber professionals to do more, okay, which is different, right? It's another tool in your arsenal. It's not, I don't see it as a way that, AI is going to replace professional. Like I said, it's augmenting those professionals with and making them more effective even. To give an example, right? If you're a cyber threat hunter or cyber incident responder, right? Uh, a lot of times when there's an incident, one of the few things you're doing is just researching, right? Looking at this log, right? Looking at this record, making sense of it all. Well, what if you can ask that, instead of you having to go through multiple systems and piecing it together, if you can type a command, right? Export logs from these systems, right? And get it out. Well, what might have taken you 25 minutes took you now 3 minutes, right? So, or even less. So it's, again, I think it's not replacing, it's augmenting and enhancing the cyber professionals.
Perfect. So
um
I'm
I want to
losing
go to another question you had brought up, or one of the individuals, about
Yep.
how do you make yourself
Stand
stand
out.
out? Yes.
I was
Stand out,
looking
right?
for that question.
um so one of the things I think Renee well, I'll break it into in a couple. One, um, so I've been lucky to build a, because I joined my current company less than 2 years ago, so I've been doing a lot of building, including building teams. So I've done a lot of hiring recently, right? And so I have some sort of lessons learned from my angle. I know you're a recruiter, so you have you probably will have your own views or enhance my views there. But one of the
Right.
things I've noticed is it it does help when I've been reached out to, and I have found myself again in the chance I've read someone's message, and when I mean the chance, like I said, hopefully people will empathize with me. I get like hundreds of messages a day, a lot of them from vendors, so I just lose track sometimes, right? But when I do by chance see a message and it's clear that this person is interested in one of the roles I have, I tend to kind of look at that person. I personally do read that person's message and look at that background. But the lesson learned here is don't forget to apply. Okay, I've come across situations where I'm like, oh yeah, sure, and turns out that this person hasn't even applied for the role. And and the reason why that's important to also apply is because what would happen is even if I was interested, I now have to go back and say, hey, did you apply? Make sure you apply, right? And and realize it's not like I'm on LinkedIn all the time. The time between me realizing you haven't even applied, checking with the recruiter to see whether you have applied, asking you, hey, did you apply, and then waiting for you to actually apply, like formally on the website, right? Maybe days, and by then maybe I've already spoken with someone else, right? Or what else has happened, right? So that's one. Another one, and I think you will probably agree to this one, Renee, is resume. Your resume shouldn't be a laundry list of everything you've done in your career. I can tell when someone, you know, I've seen a lot of resumes that are 12 pages long. Please empathize with me, right? I have the recruiter and then myself. We have so many resumes to go through. It's not uh, we don't have the luxury of that time to look at all those 12 pages. You are doing yourself a disservice if you're not highlighting the key parts of your experience that match your role, right? So, and I hear sometimes people say, "Hey, but I have so much experience. I want to be able to showcase." That's true, right? But if a CISO or security leader can summarize their experience in one page or two, right? So can you. One idea I have, and I've seen people do this, is have two versions of your resume, right? If the company allows you to submit two resumes, submit one which is like the summary, like that highlights everything and focusing on results and goal results, right, of your experience. And then have maybe a underscore detailed, which is your detailed resume. So that's another sort of lesson learned I have, right? Resume matters. uh
Resumes matter.
Resumes matter, believe it or not.
Hashtag resume.
Yeah. And how you write your resume, I guess, matter, right? uh the other, I would say, and this may be further down the line if you get an interview, or potentially you put in your cover letter, right? If a company allows you to write a cover letter, and hopefully your hiring manager is one who reads cover letters, is I think you got to know your why, right? There's breaking into cyber is absolutely a fine and a very good reason to apply for a job, right? But if you have a bigger why than that, for why you're applying to that job or that company, share that. Hey, I'm really interested in healthcare, and that's why I'm interested in this job, right? Or even more specific, because of XYZ, because I have a family situation, whatever, right? um so kind of know your why and be able to explain that, and if you can tie it to the company and the role, that also may make you stand out, right? I don't know, Renee, if you what's your thoughts
Yeah.
on that last one?
No, we got to do the hashtag resumes matter. I
Oh,
100%
please, no,
go.
no.
I was sharing with Murtaza
Or maybe
before
know
we
your why hashtag, maybe better.
know your resumes matter. Um, Two things is that he and I were chatting about the fact that I had spoken to a person who got referred to me who wanted to tell me that their very long resume was needed and that hiring managers don't read resumes, and wanted to pretty much argue with me about resumes. And eventually I just told the person, I said, hey, I'm not the one looking for a job, like do whatever you want. But I know that again, and this person was a seasoned individual contributor, so like a
Mm-hmm.
really high level individual contributor. So they did have years and years of experience, but they had, the resume was like 4 pages or whatever. And in the government, and this person wasn't a government person, I know in the government that's expected. In
Mm-hmm.
academia, you have different types, CVs, things like that. For our corporate roles, I said to him, he said to me, well, um, bots, or the applicant tracking system reads it, the manager reads the resume. And I said, but it eventually gets in front of the manager. So when
Mm-hmm.
Murtaza opens this book, he's not even going to look,
Mm-hmm.
because it goes to show. And Murtaza and I chatted about this. How does this person communicate?
Yep. Yep.
If the resume is 15 or 10 or 5 or how many ever pages, how are they going to write an email? Is it going to be some big long book? It just puts a bad taste
Right.
in the person, out of the gates. You're just thinking,
Yeah.
you have all of these resumes that look more or less the same, and this one that's completely just out of the fold.
You're
So
absolutely right. Like, as I imagine, I'm looking at the resume to see what kind of experience you have, but I'm a human, right? I'm also making inferences, and one of them is, hey, is this how is this person? What kind of communicator is this? To your point, and
right.
I mean, I empathize with that person. Although, like, I would encourage that person to take feedback, right? Versus, like, you know, uh, I guess being aggressive or defensive. You're just trying to help the person out. But I there's different views to it. I think some of it could be down to the role, right? Some roles are very technical, and yeah, maybe they need to showcase your technical experience, and this is where um you know perhaps having two resumes. And I don't know, Renee, if you, maybe I should ask you this, if this is generally acceptable, maybe uploading two versions of your resume, right? Where you know myself, right, a person who's looking for a more highlighted focus on results or resume, will look at it. But you know if you go further down the line and we need to understand the technical details, there's a detailed version as well. Do companies usually allow for multiple resumes or attachments to be uploaded?
Well, not really, not for the same job, but what you can do, what I've seen that's been really
Hmm.
that I'm impressed with. I actually, someone sent me, and I didn't get to ask the person if I could share it today, so I won't. But he had his resume, and then in the resume he had his website. And so in the
Mm.
website now has all of the, the GitHub, all the information that if I wanted to, somebody wanted to get really technical, dig down into their technical expertise, the varying projects, the deep dive, and
Mhm.
this person is pretty entry level, like 0 to 2 years or so experience. And I thought that was really impressive. Like they had the one page, for their, because they're brand new. And then they had all the projects and things that they had done. So I think that combination is nice to have, either, the one page website, or you can have your projects listed
Yeah,
on
that's a good idea.
LinkedIn, or,
That's a
something else. Because sometimes, depending on the companies, like Murtaza, you used to work at PwC back in the day. Like I don't know if they would have, some of these big companies, I don't know if they have that flexibility. Cover letters also, it's so funny. Recruiters tend to, internal recruiters tend to not really read cover letters, but I would hear from hiring managers that they read cover letters. They would read the cover
Yeah, it
letters.
depends on the high managers. I do, right? And that's
Yeah.
why I was mentioning, know the why. Now, I'll be honest, like, I read a cover letter and really quickly I may stop reading it, right? If it's clear that's a very generic letter, right? So, I can tell if this is the same cover letter this person has used for not only this job and others, but for the past 2 years, right? Um, so I mean, I don't know if that would hurt, but from my perspective, a cover letter can show your why and why really you are specifically interested in this, right? Especially if you actually have a connection there. I think that can make you stand out. The other thing about going back to the resume, and I'm sure you can probably do a whole symposium on resume writer, Renee, is I guess it also depends on the role you're applying for, right? Some roles, like I said, may need to get the technical experience noted down, but 12 pages is a lot, right? There's a limit, and
That's way
and
too
as a
much.
hiring manager, I can tell that this person have a resume that he or she built 10 years ago, and every time he or she joined a new company, had a new experience, it just continues to add to that resume, because I can tell, like, this. the person kept on doing the same thing again and again. So do I really need to know that again and again? Versus like, hey, really, the highlight was I have experience on this thing and this resulting in this, right? What I
Right.
did, and this was the outcome. So
Exactly.
okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll
I
have
know we could
we'll
probably
bring you back a little resume PTSD going on. It's we'll have to bring you back on and talk because yes, we've had numerous conversations around resumes in particular. Chris is showing off his. Chris is so extra.
and I saw a
He's
previous
showing.
comment from Ryan as well. What was that? Sorry, I
Yes,
missed it.
I'm gonna pull that put it back up. But Chris said his digital portfolio is such a great tool. Ryan, hey Ryan, she said
Mm-hmm.
personality matters as well, showcasing you can relate and be a great addition to the
Mm,
team.
such a
And
good point.
I agree. I agree. Michael is looking to land an entry level role. He's obtained Security Plus certification, studying to obtain AWS Cloud Practitioner Cert, and he interviewed for a junior analyst role and made it to the second interview. Woo! But someone
Congrats,
else
dude.
with more experience was selected. That happens. But you made it
That
to the second round.
and you got more experience, right? Now,
Yes.
now you know what
Yes.
kind of questions. But I mean, that's a very good point by Ryan, right?
Yeah.
And especially for those who are transitioning, who may not be familiar with how sort of corporate America interviews go, especially entry level, right? It's not only about the technical part, right? You're also being, I would argue, especially early, earlier sort of careers, or entry level careers, you're looking for team fit, cultural fit, right? Uh, One of the things you may be looking for is, hey, does this person show an aptitude to learn? One of the person, I think Hari had asked, right? Hey, how do I showcase experience when the entry level job shows 45? And I mentioned, hey, how about you show stuff that you've done on the side, right? To show that you're a tinkerer, right? If I'm interviewing someone, that shows to me, hey, this person is a go-getter. They want to learn, they want to try new things, right? They have the aptitude to learn. So it's not just the technical piece, your personality, as Ryan mentioned, your culture fit also are very important. And that's why, if you have a strong why, I think having a strong why really kind of shows your personality. It brings that personality out. It makes you motivated. uh it makes the interview be go from dull or just another interview to like, hey, there's a lot of passion behind this person.
Yeah. So true. My buddy Nam Dizon says, always good to learn about DevSecOps, application security. You're directly aligned with the release of applications, which drives the business for organizations. So
Yep. If you're a
other
tech company, yep,
good.
uh, there's no such thing as security being bolt on. It's got to be built in. So agree with that comment.
Exactly. Chris hashtags know your why and resumes matter. Resumes matter, man.
Yeah,
That's the one.
absolutely, absolutely.
Oh
uh,
boy. So I think there's one here. Actually, it was a larger, more mature comment. Okay, so Paul, this is a good comment to Harry saying, I think one thing we don't ask ourselves or dive deeper into is the maturity of the company. An entry level and a larger, more mature company may have less demands than a smaller, younger, less mature organization and needs more out of what they call quote entry. These can also be places where managers at the companies are in the old mindset. You have to start in generic IT support, general population, okay, generic or IT support.
that's a
So,
pretty interesting and fair comment there, Paul. Yeah. uh,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, you know, I could empathize with a company, right, that's smaller or less mature, or just with a smaller budget, where you're trying to, you're a CISO who, the budget you're given is, you have three resources, right?
Mhm.
Or heck, maybe even one, right? You're trying to get the most out of those resources. Now, if you're mature already, you may be willing to hire someone with minimal experience but aptitude to learn, knowing that, hey, I'm going to work with this person to grow. But if you're not mature, or you have to action the program and mature it really quickly, you may not have that luxury, right? So it really depends on the person and the situation and the hiring manager. uh but there's a lot of opportunity out there, right? Not all companies are going through that situation. And the same company who might be early on in their maturity and may not be able to take the entry level role or entry level with very minimal expectation experience requirements. In a few years, who knows, they've matured and now they're willing to. So don't give up on them. Continue the network, and just continue to believe that it's a hot space. You'll find something, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. We're laughing at Paul saying gen pop, like general population. I was like, what is this? Oh my gosh. Murtaza, this has been such a fabulous conversation. We're down to the last less than 10 minutes or so. So I definitely want to make sure that we get in any additional one of the things that this is the hot job series. So understanding which jobs are hot. And I know you said, and you made a point earlier saying, especially as a newer person, there's a lot of things that are not quote unquote hot, the new hot thing that still need to be done that people may not be overly excited about, but are roles that you may have seen, or that are things that when you talk to your peers, it's like we need folks that have these types of skill sets. So if you could share, just as in general and broad, what you're seeing in terms of hot jobs and where people should be focusing some of their efforts if they wanted to kind of narrow down.
I think because the industry in the cybersecurity department has diversified so much, I think it's to an advantage, right? That's why um my answer is not, hey, make sure you get the certified ethical hacker certification and that's your way in, right? Or something like that. There's I personally believe there's multiple angles to get into cybersecurity entry level. It's just knowing, looking at the job description, and seeing how your experience showcase and align with that experience. Like the examples I've given you, real life examples of teachers showcasing their teaching background to lead a cyber awareness program, of ex-detectives and lawyers showcasing that background to get into governance, risk, and compliance, right? um, the sort of engineer sort of jobs will always remain, right? Whether it
Mhm.
be incident response, SOC, security operations, pen testers, right? Break People who like to break and fix things, right? Sort of those sort of jobs will remain, and of course, having some technical background and technical experience will be useful. Again, it's not experience that I think you have to have had via full-time employment. You can find and get that experience outside of that as well, through your own means, but those will be there. But again, there's other entry level jobs now that are beyond just those technical experience. So, and that's very important for me. The reason I keep on re-emphasizing that is I don't want people to be discouraged. I want people to realize that, hey, yeah, I don't have any IT technical background. Okay, no problem. There may be opportunity for you somewhere in a cyber program still.
Yeah.
And my program has great examples of that, of that happening.
Right. Yes, I agree. I think that sometimes it is hard. We get into a very kind of, I want to focus in this one area, or I need to have this, whereas your examples really show how you took some folks who had one set of background, one set of experiences, and then layered on, so they were able to get the cybersecurity experience. And kind of, I mean, that's how I got into security. Like I was in HR, and the leader at the time, the CISO, well, he wasn't yet a CISO, but he saw all these different skill sets that came with being in this role, and he was like, I think you'd be fit great in this role in my department. And so I ended up leaving HR in this big Fortune 50 company that I was in, and
Hmm.
moved into his department, which is another thing actually that I tend to talk about a lot in terms of job movement, especially when you're transitioning. If you're already in a corporation, I mean, the folks in Murtaza's examples, they were literally coming from a completely
Hmm.
different field. So if you're a teacher and you're in education, you're either working in K through
Hmm.
12 school, or if you're in a college or something like that, transitioning to corporate America, or being a detective transitioning to corporate America, that's like different layers of the transition
Right.
part, and the technical expertise, the learning, and then the corporate
Hmm.
component. But if you're inside of a corporation and you want to break into security, and you're in I don't know, legal or HR or finance or whatever, and there's a security department there, you can totally be like the freebie ambassador. Like you come to someone like Murtaza and
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, I want to learn. Or can I be the ambassador, or can I do
Mm-hmm.
some kind of support, like the internal volunteer person? And that I've seen work out really, really well, where they look to you as, like you would look to this person if you had a role that you thought fit with that person's skill set. So,
Right. Yeah, and go again. I think what you and I have discussed a few minutes ago, it all comes back to everybody has experiences, and those experiences are worthwhile, right? It doesn't have to be technical. We covered the detect, a detective calm under pressure, a teacher being good at communicating and teaching, right? You're a physical security guard. Hey, you're great at you have experience in monitoring, right? And sort of incidents and doing analysis like that. Um, Experience could be, hey, I've worked in this industry, so I know this industry really well,
right.
right? So there's what's important is for you to do self reflection about your experience. Hopefully, if you have a mentor, work with them to say, hey, how does my experience, this is what I think, how my experience can relate to cybersecurity, and potentially maybe that mentor or that peer can guide you, oh, to dive to get deeper into that, maybe do these trainings or read these books, right? And then the final thing I would say is, hopefully once you get to the point of getting interviewed, remember it's a two-way street, right? You're also interviewing the company to see whether they're a fit for you too. um, Never forget that, right? If diversity, equity, inclusion is important for you, ask those sort of questions. If a cultural fit, team fit is, that's got to be important for you. See whether they're someone who's gonna help you grow versus someone who's just gonna throw stuff at you and blame at you if it doesn't get done, right? Are they willing to help? Are they in a company that are agile, with an agile mindset that allows you to fail small and fail with purpose, right? Because that's how you're going to learn. So those things matter too, because
Yeah.
that's going to really define your, especially if it's your first job.
Right, right. And it's sometimes hard to figure out when it's your first job. I mean, you just want most people they want to get in, but those are such great tips. Couple of final comments here, and we're gonna wrap. Medical, Chris says medical is such a regulated field, safety focused. Cyber should be focused on patient safety. And Courtney Reynolds, she started from dental assistant
That's
and then
amazing.
changed into IT during the pandemic. So I think that is fantastic, Courtney. Great job.
Hmm.
Great
Congrats,
job.
Courtney. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So, Murtaza, we are wrapping up. We have about 1 minute left. Is there anything, any great pieces of advice that you would like to share? Any final words of wisdom? Hashtag resumes matter. Hashtag.
No, no, you're right. No, I mean, thank you. Thanks again, Renee, for inviting me. I'm humbled that you invited me. I really appreciate it. You're doing great work for the cyber industry. For those who are listening, who are leaders and are future leaders, again, make yourself more approachable, right? Be vulnerable, right? So that the people who are looking feel safe and comfortable reaching out to you. And for those who are seeking, right, if you're looking at a mentor, don't be shy. Reach out. Again, the worst that can happen. They may say no. And no, hopefully this was useful. Um, Thanks for inviting me.
I know it is. It absolutely was. It absolutely was. So, and Courtney says, thank you so much. And I know that it will start flooding with thank yous. So, Murtaza, thank you again for being here, sharing your experiences. Like I said, I was just over the moon excited when you talked about the detective and the teacher, because we get this. I mean, it happens every day. We get messages asking, how to transition, and especially coming from those different types of skill sets and those different industries and everything else. So thank you once again. And for the security peeps that are here, we are wrapping it up. We have the next person coming on. The CTO of Intel will be here on Friday, so stay tuned for that. Murtaza, thank you again. We look forward to having you. Actually, I feel like a panel is coming, um, because I want to meet those people. I totally want to meet them. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye, everyone.